Welcome. You're listening to Literacy Now, the official podcast for the nonprofit organization Parents for Reading Justice, and I am your host, Brett Tingley.
It's not just about early literacy. It's about literacy that is cumulative. So for Marva, knowledge matters, yes. And at times she read to the kids because they couldn't read it yet for themselves, but she was on a journey of bringing them there and connecting the dots between strong foundational literacy skills that could be built upon for a lifetime. Words are containers of power, and she knew that they could transform the spirits of children, giving them a bold vision for themselves by keeping those expectations high, taking them where they are, but bringing them where they could be. And that's why she's my hero. She understood how one hand washes the other. And so what the science of reading looks like in first grade is not what it's going to look like in 12th grade. If we've done our job in 12th grade, it's highly sophisticated language development, writing development, because they have foundational skills. And she is truly my model. My other shero is Linda Diamond, who actually trained under Marva Collins. So she's my close connection to Marva. I wish I could have met Marva, but Linda is my shero who fully understands what Marva represented and who suffered doing this work. I have to tell you this too, and I said this once when I was an assistant principal, functionally a dean of instruction at a middle school. And my colleagues laughed at me who were also assistant principals. I said, leadership requires suffering. Well, and they said, no, that's not true. Just check Twitter if you don't believe me. Say something on Twitter that the fundamentalists don't like. Oh, you better believe it requires some suffering. But I'd rather have the stripes on my back for doing the right thing, because when I give account one day, and I believe we will all one day give account, it will be for fighting for those who have no voice and who cannot fight for themselves. I would rather take that pain than the pain of seeing children drown in a sea of illiteracy on my watch. And so I am declaring, and I believe that on our watch, this is going to change on our watch. I can see it, I can taste it, I can feel it. The momentum is building, and it is coming.
Well, and was it Roosevelt? I forget who said it, but it's one of my favorite quotes too. And he says, admire the man in the arena, the one who is out there trying and who has the scars and who has fallen, who has failed, but gets back up and continues to fight. And if my thing is, if you don't fight for children and their basic right to read, what will you fight for?
You know, I'm looking through, I have Brene Brown's Dare to Lead.
Yes, that's where I became aware of that first. Yes.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. I will fail forward, I will learn forward, I will not stop. And I invite you to embrace those words. Dare greatly, lead valiantly, influence bravely, and be the butterfly effect on your watch for our children.
I will follow you anywhere. Amen. Goodness gracious. Woo! Yeah, because we feel that, and as parents, it's really very alienating to be one of the first ones to realize in a district
Mm.
what's going on. And there are people who are not excited for you to raise your hand or not excited to get that call. Um,
You're that parent, right?
yeah, but it is for children. And if you can get your child taken care of, and then you can pull a group together and flip a whole district,
Yeah.
you are changing the lives, the trajectories of thousands of children, thousands of families for really forever. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yes. The generational impact of this work. If anybody has a question about that, just look at me. Just look at me. You know, I'm a little inner city girl from Detroit. And for me, this is God's work. I'm a person of faith. And there's one phrase that I hold dear to me. It says that God takes the weak and the base things, the things that are despised, that no flesh should glory, to confound the wise. That's me. Anything worthwhile I've been able to achieve is totally a God thing, Brett. If you had told me I'd have the opportunity to lead an organization like Neuhaus Education Center, that I'd be a CEO, that I would be working with the most amazing team in the land, I believe, scaling the work from local to national, I didn't see that, but my mother saw that little butterfly in me. And so I feel a deep calling to be that encourager, to come alongside educators, that shoulder partner that speaks life and hope and purpose and potential into educators, shining a light on the most honorable of all professions. Because without this profession, educating children, there are no other professions. And so any way that I can influence from the middle, from teacher salary to, the right preparation, most importantly, that upstream issue, sign me up. Sign me up. Reach out to me. I believe in educators with all my heart, and they deserve to be honored in that profession, apprenticed well, and ready day one to be the difference we need to see in this world.
Well, and that brings up the issue. So I love your stance on. We've talked a lot about teacher prep programs or colleges of education.
Yes.
And I have my own theories, but I'm interested in understanding your thoughts about really, I think that's the root of the problem.
It's the root.
So why are they so stuck in their ways? Why are they not teaching their students, our children's teachers, how to teach reading that is all based in current science?
You know, I want to first of all acknowledge um, the universities who are the outliers, committed to doing the right work by educators. They realize they are there in service to educators so that they are equipped to win this battle against functional illiteracy. They are out there, but they should not be outliers. I would say for those who are not on board, they've forgotten who they intended to be. You know, I believe some of these folks, when they started, they really believed they were there to do exactly that, empower educators to win at their work. But then they get comfortable and cozy. I'm tenured. They haven't been in a classroom really entrenched in the real work, maybe for decades. My preparation for teaching reading was a joke. I'll just say that. It was a joke. And I never heard the word dyslexia mentioned. Not once. That's insane. My sons certified to become teachers. And I must tell you, as much as I love my alma mater, their preparation wasn't that much different than mine. I'm going to be 61 next week. That's insane. That's crazy. That's unacceptable. And so I think back to a few weeks ago, I got a call from a professor who is a believer. She is not tenured, and she's being forced to teach science of reading in a Texas university and maintain curriculum that's aligned to practices we need to strategically abandon. And she's so frustrated, and she's thinking, Tracy, what do I do? I'm finding they have provided these tests that are asking teachers to say this is the right answer, and it's not. It's against the science. And so I'm saying they want you to say this is the right answer, but this is the truth. And I said, let's talk about who you know. Who can you influence? Turns out she knows the university president personally. I said, let me help you influence from the middle, because he doesn't have a clue of what's going on. So I think some professors are under the radar trying to figure out how to manage around some of their colleagues who are fundamentalists. And you need to join the village. You need to get associated with Neuhaus Education Center, the Reading League, and others who are allies, so that you can build your village and influence strategically from the middle. Sometimes a prophet has no honor in his or her own country. You may need to find somebody else to say the tough things that you're not safe to say. I'll do it. Call me in. I'll say it. And I would also encourage people to get books like this one. It's called Mississippi Rising, and it's written by Letta Palmater. Mississippi Rising talks about how people were strategic about influencing from the middle, top to bottom, legislation to district, State Department, the villagers coming together. There are principles that are transferable that you could use. And that includes universities. And the Barksdale Foundation did some really intriguing work around an analysis of how teachers were being apprenticed to teach reading. And they did it in a very respectful way. And they did that upfront work that I've described earlier to prepare professors for change, not just do to them. It's doing with, not to. So who are those allies who can help you do with, not to, within your realm of influence? Who are those professors who believe in the science? Find them. If you need help finding them, that's why you got to ally yourself to organizations, connect yourself to organizations that know how to bring people together. And if you do that, you'll find your village.
Well, and that's interesting, because one of the things, like I always think from a business perspective about market forces. And so once we flipped our district, we went in with the leadership of the district to talk to a large university very close here in Columbus, and to kind of give them customer feedback and ask them, we wanted to partner with them. We want to work with you, but we are your customer, and we're finding that the graduates are not prepared. And so we're spending a lot of money on professional development. We're not hiring them nearly as much as we had. We're not using some of the programs that you're promoting. We want to work with you, but we are not buying what you're selling anymore.
And that's why we have so many ACP programs, Brad. In Texas, we have like 200 of them. And here's what they're missing. Sometimes all that people care about is dollars. Well, guess what? If people don't want to become teachers, your Department of Education is becoming, I'm trying to reach for the right word. Basically, nobody cares about what you're doing. Obsolete. That's the word.
Irrelevant.
Thank you,
yeah.
Irrelevant. Obsolete. You're becoming obsolete. You're a dinosaur and don't even know it. So ACP programs, we have to create a teacher pipeline some way, but it's very difficult to create a practicum experience that doesn't overload ACP candidates. Doesn't mean they can't infuse some sort of apprenticing so they actually apply. It's not just passing a test. It's not just pedagogical knowledge. It's coaching and application so that they can succeed at the work. So presidents of universities need to be thinking bigger and bolder about their departments of education and reinventing how they're apprenticing not just teachers, but superintendents, curriculum and instruction, special ed educators, apprenticing them in this key area of focus. If they did that, they would actually attract dollars, funders, philanthropists. They would be able to tout their success stories. They would be able to be really helpful to those consumers that are the districts, as you said, Brett. And here's the thing, I think finding economists who can bring that down to dollars and cents, taxpayer dollars are being squandered. Educator dollars, as they pay for degrees, are being squandered. What kind of funding are we squandering by not doing the right thing in departments of ed, in universities? Quantifying that would be startling. And that needs to be taken to the business community too. And just start sharing that data. I'll give you the example of the Barbara Bush Foundation did some amazing partnership here in Houston. The mayor's office here created an adult literacy focus. It's called MOLE, Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy. I'm on the advisory board. And they consigned with Gallup to analyze the cost of functional illiteracy among adults. And it's trillions of dollars. Trillions that could be recaptured. Businessmen need to know that. Businesswomen need to know that. So that they can support systemic change and understand that the stakes affect them. Sometimes we have, when someone has a dyslexic student, it's affected them. There are stakeholders who don't know how it's affecting them. And so they can also push, chambers of commerce push on these universities to transform. It's that kind of strategic pressure, but building awareness that needs to be done. And I am eager to speak wherever presidents of universities gather. I'd be happy to share.
Well,
I don't think they know.
Parents for Reading Justice is a nonprofit grassroots movement dedicated to ensuring every child learns to read by engaging parents and educators in adopting the science of teaching reading. Please watch our award-winning film, Our Dyslexic Children, take our master class, and to ensure all our services remain free of charge, please consider making a donation today, all at parentsforreadingjustice.org.
I have another, the latest is that we've got 3 or 4 school districts around here that have flipped. And we have relationships with the parent groups in that district who have strong relationships with the district leadership. And we're considering, maybe give us your opinion on this. I had thought originally to have 4 districts, come in separately and give their feedback. And someone else said, why not put them all together and invite the College of Education dean, the provost, and maybe the president of the university. And
Bingo, provost for sure.
All 4.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, especially with that data available to make the case for change in ways that would be meaningful. Some universities have a strong community vision, and they care about their community. They just don't know. They just need their hearts and minds engaged. Others, it's about money. Others, it's about prestige. I don't care. Just do the right thing. So it's really tapping into what matters to them, understanding what matters to them, and giving them an experience that they will walk away and never forget. It might be a panel of inmates who are the product of failed systems and what happened to them as a result of being functionally illiterate. Let's be creative. And when people walk away, they can't go to sleep easily knowing that on their watch, things have not changed. And let's think about ACPs because they're their competitors. What would happen if you recaptured these individuals and they invested in your program instead of ACPs? There's nothing wrong with ACPs, but
Tell us what an ACP is. I know it's some kind of but
yes, thank you for that.
okay.
Alternative certification program.
Okay.
But Brett, this is the big vision that I am eager to see come to life. And that is universities creating model lab schools. You know, charters are not the panacea. Some people think the charter, no, you cannot segregate kids if they're dyslexic and think that's the solution. Because the kids who couldn't get to the charter, that they're not, they should be incubators though. So either a charter or a public model lab school where pre-service teachers can actually be apprenticed in the science and leaders. And so when they leave, they have had these problems of practice they've actually been able to activate their knowledge and do. Then when they step in, they know how to organize themselves for the right work and sustainable change. If I had a do-over for my doctoral and my master's program, that's what I would have wanted. It's doable, it's achievable.
Well, and it's essentially a proof of concept that this is going to work for kids. And a proof of concept is that it does work. And here is the example. And I think it's interesting when you talk about the Ohio philanthropists who essentially took the school down to see for themselves that it works.
That it worked.
And that brings so much buy-in when you're coming back. You know, and issues come up. This is interesting because our district has become kind of a model district in the state because they were one of the first ones to flip. But it's difficult because it's always changing. New things are happening. You know, really educating the leadership and all the way up. We think even to the school board. You know, we invite.
Absolutely to the school board.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And as you think about inviting people, that for board members who understand what's at stake, including them in that gathering, it's crucial. They don't know what they don't know. And sometimes they'll get pushed back because it's hard work to learn to do this. Some teachers in our professional development opportunities weep and they say, why didn't anybody ever teach me this? And others are resistant. So if a resistant teacher gets in the ear of a board member, they may think they're really protecting, but they're harming the system. So yes, absolutely. Brett, there's one other thing I meant to say, and that is, how do we make this the most attractive profession? You know, countries like Finland, they figured out how to bring honor back to it. We need grow your own teacher prep programs. And we need to show, if they see teachers winning at their work or they're experiencing that as a student, we tend to teach the way we were taught. When a district flips, they need to think about pre-service teachers and growing them right there at home. What if children like that were scholarshiped to become teachers and come back to work in the district, going through that lab school experience? That's what I call the righteous cycle that districts have the potential to create, so that there's this constant loop of continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can fight some of the other battles like teacher salary, you know, the social emotional dynamics where that can interfere with teachers who need to be the psychologists and the this and the that and bringing kids food and clothing. We need to organize other villagers to address those barriers to learning so that we can incubate these beautiful loops of implementation science and building upon that and closing the gap between when we have implementation science unearthed and when it actually becomes available to schools. Incubators like this, with this loop, would reduce that time instead of 10 to 11 years to a very short time span. That's my dream now. That's my dream.
Well, and that's brilliant because then you have people who are very engaged in that district. And, you know, it's
continuous learning.
Yeah.
Learning.
And a connection to the district. And as you say, my father was a professor and was respected, but he did a speech in Japan, and I had a break from work, and I was excited. I love to travel, so I went with him, and we got off the plane, and it was like, the king had arrived. Yeah, and they took us out to
Wow.
dinner, and they just were so excited to have him there and so honored. And I thought, we have got this wrong. Our culture does not value educators
Mhm.
like we should. I agree 100%.
We honor professors sometimes like that,
Well, yes, some
which
of
is
them
ironic,
shouldn't.
right? Some of the professors those outliers deserve every bit of that honor, but those that are, we cannot prevent student failure if we do not prevent educator failure. And so, as professors and deans of instruction, deans of education, when we are preventing educator failure, we are bringing honor to this profession. If we are not, we are bringing dishonor to this profession. Teachers can, those who can teach when they're prepared not to fail at the work.
Mm. Um, you spoke very eloquently at the Ohio IDA Summit that I came to see you at last. And you talk about how literacy is a civil rights issue,
Well, I
um,
call it a human rights issue.
a human rights issue. So the
Mhm.
most basic of all.
Yes.
Um, and the impacts, the macro societal impacts of not teaching our children to read in this knowledge economy and this information age. Can
Yes,
you elaborate a little bit more and kind of put a point on that?
absolutely. Let's start with children with dyslexia. Children with dyslexia who do not receive services become adults who are at risk for drug abuse, higher rates of suicide, poverty, and ultimately the school to prison pipeline. That's human rights. That's a human rights issue. Children who are navigating the war zone of poverty or who have another disability or reading disability, who do not receive strong first instruction. In this country, our issue is not intervention, it's prevention. Their ticket from the land of not enough to the land of more than enough is literacy. It is the currency of the 21st century. That's a human rights issue. They may be able to achieve through something that does not require reading, but we have contracts we have to read to buy a home. We have insurance we have to read. I ended up in the ER some months ago, and I was struck by how much literacy was involved with me getting the right treatment. What if I had been there functionally illiterate? What if I need to read a prescription for my child and I accidentally overdose my kid? That happens. There are physicians who care about this work because of that. They knew that that barrier was functional literacy for the parent. They didn't mean to harm their child. There is an intergenerational impact where parents who feel like, I can't read to my kid because I can't read. And so the Matthew effect takes hold because we failed that parent, and it carries on to the next generation before they even come to school. A parent who has to work 3 jobs because they're functionally illiterate, it's not dyslexia, it's dysteachia. They look like they're dyslexic. They're not. They just never got the right instruction. That, Brett, is a human rights issue. And it doesn't matter what region of the country we're talking about where we see entrenched poverty, again, regardless of the suit we were sent here in, regardless of the language we're loved in or the dialect we're loved in, we should be able to access classroom English and the structure of the language. We deserve to have that unpacked fully. And when I say the structure of the language, not just decoding, I'm talking about oral language, I'm talking about writing, I'm talking about presenting our ideas. I'm talking about fully literate. And then we get to choose what pathway we want for ourselves. We have a real choice when that happens.
And can you tell us definitively, because there are a couple of little myths that I want to get out of the way. One of the things that they'll say is that the science of reading or structured literacy is not for these kids. It's just for these kids. But the science of reading works for dyslexic students. It works for English learners.
Yes.
It works for all students. Is that
It works
true?
for all children.
Mm-hmm.
And if the kid comes to you decoding, then guess what? You differentiate instruction. And you move that kid to advanced levels because they're ready to benefit from the next level. Do you teach them those foundational skills if they have them? Of course not. That's where, if I'm a doctor and I have a patient who's well, I'm not going to treat them for diabetes. I'm going to talk to them about prevention and maybe ways of even increasing their health, right? It's that logical application of the science that teachers who are well apprenticed know how to do. If teachers are teaching to the middle when it comes to the science of reading, they don't understand the science. And so some people will take these examples of teachers who have not been well apprenticed in teaching the structure of a language strategically and treat that like that's the common way of doing it. It's not. It's not the same in every case. If we're finding that that is a teach to the middle approach, then there's a lack of understanding about how to be diagnostic and prescriptive in the craft. Just like a surgeon would be, or just like a pilot landing a plane. A pilot flying is not going to act like they're in a storm if it's clear weather. But if they hit a storm, they know how to navigate it. They're diagnostic and prescriptive in their practice. And there are foundational aspects of flying that plane that they know like the back of their hand. Teachers deserve the same thing.
Another thing that I've seen just recently, kind of on Twitter, because I find that interesting to just watch a little bit, and is that, science of reading is for a certain type of kid. It's for poor kids, or it's not for these kids. Now, does it also, it goes across all socioeconomic levels?
Yes.
Okay.
That's literacy privilege getting in the way.
Mm-hmm. And
again, in some districts, it may look like there's great instruction going on, but there's great tutoring behind the scenes going on. There's great certified academic language therapy going on that the school is not providing, right? So let's not pretend like that's not reality. When I have resources, if my kid has any barrier, and I have 3 beautiful children, I'm going to try to do everything I can, and I can afford it. But what about that mom or dad who have to choose between groceries and therapy? It's expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. And so the great equalizer is ensuring systemically we're preventing failure and we're providing intervention that's targeted, quick, and once we got it, we keep it moving.
There is also, in terms of who you choose to ally yourself with to kind of fight this fight. And our contention is you can't have too many friends in this fight, regardless of politics or culture, even the adults, the parents, or the foundations, or the literacy advocates. There's still some kind of infighting there. What are your thoughts there?
One of the things I really enjoyed doing with the Reading League for the Defining Guide was identifying the recommended rules of engagement. And if you get the Defining Guide, you'll find that section in it, and it talks about how do we resolve conflict in a way that allows for healthy dialogue, but not toxic behavior from adults that distract and confuse educators. If we're doing that, if we're getting a thrill out of dropping a Twitter bomb just to stir the waters, it's about you and your ego. It's not about kids, and it's not about educators. Educators need us to to be coherent. And so respectfully, if you have an intellectual disagreement with someone, go to them. Don't go talk to somebody over here or tweet about it. You haven't given that person the honor of dialogue between the two of you and saying, on this one, I don't know if it'd be helpful to surface this, or do we agree to disagree? That's just being a person of character. Some people are characters and some people have character. It's not the same thing. At times, then, we need to find a mutual ally who cares about both individuals to help facilitate a deeper dialogue. Again, this is private. It's like the mom and the dad who say, we need to go see a marriage counselor so that we can process this, but we're not going to do that in front of the kids, so to speak. Not that educators are kids. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying respectful, private dialogue, facilitated dialogue. If we're really serious about solutions and not about, well, I think this is my soapbox and this is my legacy. It's not about you. It's about the kids. And third, there are times when we just have to call it out as toxic publicly. If people are not willing to do those incremental steps that are dignified, respectful, and appropriate, and we have to stop giving them attention. We have to stop giving them attention and say, don't tag me, don't tweet me, not engaging with you. You are a distraction. So we have to use good judgment. And I would say not everybody is someone you want to invite to your village. You don't want to invite the fox into the hen house, right? So you've got to let people show you who they really are and then believe it. By their fruit, you will know them. If a person is sowing thorns and thistles, you're going to see that. If they're sowing roses, you're going to see that. And sometimes roses have some prickly thorns, but you have to carefully know how to get past the prickly thorns to enjoy the flower. So we can't always have, if everybody agrees on everything, somebody is probably unnecessary in this conversation. It's good to have healthy discourse, but the science is the science. If the proven practice is the proven practice, let's do it. Let's learn. Let's build the implementation science. Let's go to the next and the next level together. So that's the way I intend to operate in the world and in model. And sometimes you answer a fool according to their folly. And sometimes you don't answer a fool. You have to decide, what kind of foolishness is this? Is this worth me responding to? Because I don't want this person to be wise in their own eyes and think that this is okay. Other people will think this is aligned to the science. Then we have to answer that. But sometimes it's just distraction, blah, blah, blah stuff. And then don't even give it attention. Just keep it moving. Keep doing you. Keep letting your light shine. They're just trying to dim your light. Don't let their shade dim your light. And talk to people who can encourage you and get you past it, because there's venom in some of those fangs, and you may need somebody who can talk you off that emotional ledge where you feel like, I can't do this anymore. We're human. And there's some mean people out there.
Well, and I could talk to you all day long, but I want to be careful about our time. And like I said, everything you're saying is just completely fascinating to me. But so I wanted to close. What we normally do is we ask people, since this is really a podcast focused for parents.
Yes.
Is do you have any advice that you would like to leave with parents?
Yes. My advice to leave with parents is fight for your child like a mama bear and a papa bear. Do fight for your child. But remember, be strategic. Chess, not checkers. Secondly, fight for other people's children. Love all children. And use your influence for people who don't have the capacity or time or funding to fight. You won't regret it. It will bring you such joy and peace knowing that you are that kind of change agent. And last of all, remember the shoulders you stand on. There are reasons. It might be your own child struggle. It might be a parent who believed in you. Who were your allies? Who fought to give you a place at the table? Go back to those core values and stay anchored in them and true to them. And when those values become slippery, as Brene Brown says in Dare to Lead, have a truth speaker who will tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. Who will give you that courage and that resolve to press on. Because on our watch, this is going to change, and you are a part of that change. The last thing I want to say to you parents is thank you. Thank you for being that grassroots powerhouse, the flame for this movement. You really were the ones who put folks like me in a position to fight valiantly for all of our children. And I'm so grateful to each of you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Honored, so honored to be asked, Brett, and thank you for being you. You're an inspiration, and I'm so thankful that I know you.
Well, I feel the same about you. Thank you so much.
Literacy Now is a podcast designed specifically for parents in our effort to ensure every child learns to read. Parents deserve a seat at the table, and we bring their voices to the fore. We invite you to join the Parents for Reading Justice community on all of our socials, and make sure to visit our website to watch our documentary and to take our masterclass. All of our content is free of charge because every child deserves to learn to read. This episode was brought to you by parentsforreadingjustice.org, produced by Brett Tingley and Keita Mascaro.